Welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast. We're your source for personal, professional, and organizational growth and development, where we share original research, explore industry trends, and interview executives and thought leaders from across the globe. We hope you join us often for practitioner-oriented content around all things related to leadership, HR, talent management, organizational development, and change management. Maximize your personal and organizational potential with Human Capital Innovations Podcast. Do you enjoy the Human Capital Innovations Podcast? Enjoy ad-free listening by going to the Patreon page, and please consider contributing even at the producer or sponsorship level. And please leave a review. Thank you for your support. Welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast. In this HCI Podcast episode, I talk with David Carandish about maximizing your team's capacity with a secure AI-native support automation platform. David Carandish, welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
It is a pleasure to be with you. You're joining us from St. Louis, Missouri. I'm south of Salt Lake City in Utah. And today we're going to be talking about maximizing your team's capacity with a secure AI native support automation platform. And that's a very technical title and kind of introduction. You're going to help us unpack that. But I'm all about increasing people's capacity, allowing them to be more productive and efficient, and helping them to do their work better and smarter. And so using AI in a way to help with all of that, I think is fantastic. So this is what we'll be discussing together today. As we get started, I wanted to share David's bio with everybody. David Carandish is founder and CEO of Capacity, an enterprise SaaS company headquartered in St. Louis, Missouri. Capacity is an AI-powered support automation platform that connects your entire tech stack to answer questions, automate repetitive support tasks, and build solutions to any business challenge. Prior to starting Capacity, David was the CEO of Answers Corp. He and his business partner, Chris Sims, started the parent company of Answers in 2006 and sold it to a private equity firm in 2014 for $960 million. David sits on the boards of Create a Loop, a computer science education nonprofit tackling the digital divide by teaching kids to code, and Prepare AI, a nonprofit providing educational resources and strategic guidance about artificial intelligence to individuals, communities, and companies. David was always an early investor and board member at Nerdy, an on-demand real-time learning platform in the edtech space. He lives in St. Louis, Missouri with his wife, Erin, and 4 kids. And when not working, he enjoys spending time with his family and playing the ukulele. What a tremendous background. It is truly a pleasure to be with you. Anything else you would like to share with listeners by way of your background or for personal context before we dive on in further?
I think that's a great place to start.
Okay, fantastic. And I am not a ukulele player myself. I play the guitar a little bit. I have 6 children, and my 4 oldest, I have 4 girls and then 2 boys. And my 4 girls all are, they play instruments, piano, guitar, ukulele, all of those. And it's when I can steal moments to be able to like listen in on them when they don't know I'm listening, that's when I, pure joy, that it's just so much fun. And then they realize I'm there and then they like stop because they get embarrassed or whatever, but it's fun.
Yeah, I have an electric guitar, which I very much enjoy playing. But after having kids, I switched over to more time on the uke, just with little kids and naps and all that. So yeah, for sure. Well, very good. Well, why don't you start off by just telling us a little bit more about Capacity? I teased it a little bit, but maybe unpack that for us, help us understand what you do and why it's important in building the capacities of our teams at work. Yes, if I was at a party talking about AI, which it happens to happen more often than I'd probably like to admit, I would say that Capacity, I would define it in 3 words. I'd say we are a support automation platform. On the support side, when we launched just a few years ago, we built an AI-powered bot that can answer questions either internally for your team or externally for your customers. And increasingly, that division between internal and external is less of a hard line and more of a gray gradient, as your team has more customer-centric questions and your customers want to know more about how things are going internally. But the basic idea is that you can ask the bot a question, it will come back instantly with a response, and continue to learn with every question you throw at it. So when we launched just a few years back, Capacity was answering about 55% of questions automatically. Today, it's up over 90%. And so the AI's gotten really smart at understanding what people mean by what they say, and also connecting to a lot more data sources behind the scenes. Second part on the automation side is we have a workflow platform that can take the steps that you would normally have a person doing in a process. Maybe that's reading a document, sending an email, looking up some information in Salesforce. And instead of having a person do that, we have the bot do that behind the scenes. The analogy I like to use is the AI-powered bot on the front end is more like the server in a restaurant asking you about the steak dinner and the salad and the wine pairing and the appetizer, and think of the workflow component as the guys and gals in the kitchen chopping up the vegetables, making the soup, kind of serving the entire restaurant. And then lastly, platform, we can connect Capacity to a wide variety of different data sources. So we've got over 120 apps that have built-in connectors to Capacity. You can go roll your own if you want to go connect it to your own software. We also plug into, I think, 5 of the major database types. So you want to connect to MySQL or SQL Server or something like that, we can do that as well. And then we just recently added an RPA component where if you want Capacity to go log into a website and go grab information from an app that doesn't have an API, we can tackle that as well.
That's super cool. And my first kind of snarky comment is, well, are we just like introducing Skynet and the rise of the machines, and pretty soon this AI will become self-aware and destroy civilization as we know it? Your response to that would be?
I think we have a long way to go where the AI gets there. I do think, though, and this is maybe a different approach than some other companies take. We don't believe everything will be automated by an AI, but we do believe that there is a set of what we call like level 0 support functions where you really don't want a person having to log into ADP to pull your vacation balance, or have to look up on page 47 of your team member handbook to try to understand what the parental leave policy is. I think there's this baseline level set of things where we believe your team shouldn't have to waste time on that and let people do the things that people are really good at.
Yeah, and I was being facetious. I think automation is really important. We've seen various forms of automating work since really the beginning of work and time. And with the rise of the Industrial Revolution, many say we're now in the 4th wave of the Industrial Revolution with these technologies and automations that are happening, AI, deep machine learning and such, advanced robotics. And I mean, one way we can look at it is kind of, that's dystopian future, rise of the machines. But another way to look at it, perhaps on the other end of the spectrum, perhaps equally unrealistic, is kind of the Star Trek utopian future, where we just free ourselves up to just focus on exploration and discovery and doing things that are meaningful. We're going to be somewhere in the middle of there. But I like to think of, how I can utilize AI to be more productive. There are so many things that I do in my workday that I hate doing, that are just repetitive, menial things, that if I just could free myself up of those things, then I could spend more time being creative, strategic.
Absolutely.
I could spend more time focusing on really what matters and less time on that other stuff. And I think that trickles down to all sorts of jobs. And so there will be some work displacement. Some jobs will go away. Some industries will have rapid disruption and change. Some professions might rapidly change. But the reality is we're going to free up more time for people to do more meaningful work, to make meaningful contributions. And for every task that gets taken over by automation, it's going to just open up new possibilities and 5 other things that now we get to do that we couldn't do before, because we have greater technology to support it. So that's how I approach it. But I recognize the resistance that many people have as they think about AI and deep machine learning. And it's one thing to talk about chatbots; it's another thing to talk about, pulling information, doing all these different things. And some people get a little bit nervous about that.
Yeah, I mean, I like to start kind of it's at the ground level on what do we mean by AI and automation. Like, David, give me your quick definitions. So and there's probably someone's done a more formal, more precise definition, but I'll give you my kind of layman's definition. Automation is simply shifting human labor to technology in a process. We've been doing that since the wheel came out, right? Using technology to take what used to be human labor in some kind of process and free people up. And then if you think of AI, my simplest definition of AI is software that learns and applies patterns. And so if you start to put those two together and you say, when you have AI and automation, you've got software that starts to take on human labor while also learning and applying patterns along the way. Now, there are certain patterns that you have to definitely guard yourselves against. For example, if you had a data set that said, I'm about 6'2", 6'3", and if your last 3 people that you had to fire were over 6 foot, the data set might say, oh, don't hire this person who's very tall. Well, that's a confounding variable that isn't going to actually lead to any positive results. So you have to be careful. I want to be very clear on that. But there's so much of what we do that involves logging into systems, copying and pasting, filling out forms. Nobody said they want to be a copy and paster all day. I have one of our clients, a true story. They do a revenue reconciliation process. And this poor woman, Tina, is literally logging in to 17 different systems a day and reconciling what happens with these accounts. And so we're looking at it and saying, is that really her doing her best work? If you come into the St. Louis office, we've got a big sign that says our mission is not to remove people from work. Our mission is to help teams do their best work. And so I'm constantly challenging myself and my team and our clients. What can we do to help you do your best work? And we believe that we can help automate that baseline level of support. We can free you up to go do what you can do uniquely and creatively.
Yeah, I love that. I think that is a very helpful background and definition of some of those terms, and a good framing for how we think about automation. Like you said, automation has been with us always. It just takes different forms at different points in time. So we don't need to be fearful of it. We do need to be cautious. We need, there are ethical considerations. There are things we need to be concerned about baking in, implicit biases into AI and how we train AI. Say, for example, I'm in the HR space, and there's more and more companies using AI in hiring processes, for example. And when that first started, several years back, was when those first companies were starting to come out with some of those offerings. But then very quickly, what we started to recognize and acknowledge was that we were training the AI with bias that was disproportionately weeding out, perhaps people of color or women or name whatever protected class. So not only is it illegal, it's unethical, and it's just incredibly problematic. It's going to hurt the diversity of your team. And so those types of things we just have to be aware of, and we have to be cautious about. So we utilize a tool just like any other tool in a healthy and effective way, and not allow ourselves to get sucked into taking the easy path, when that's not actually going to get us to where we want to be. So I don't think that's what you're saying. That's not what I'm saying. We just have to make sure that we're cognizant of that and putting in place, checks to make sure that those things aren't happening.
Yeah, I can give you a great example. So one of our clients, when you onboarded as a new team member there, they would give you a printed out 247-page binder of what all their policies and procedures are, how to log into these different systems, and you were expected to read it, have the whole thing basically memorized in a week. So you can imagine how well that went, right? You've got people who, first of all, couldn't even get through all the material. And second of all, even if they did read it, they couldn't retain it. Third of all, searching through that document was painful. Fourth of all, it wasn't with them on the go. So if they're actually out in the job, and they're not tethered to their desk, they don't have that giant 3-ring binder to go with them. And so we're taking processes like this and we're saying, okay, let's just flip it on its head. What if every question anyone has ever asked in your onboarding process was available through a bot that you could ask and get an instant response back? And you could even see what are the top questions people tend to ask. What if you were developing your onboarding and training, instead of having to guess where people might need some help filling in the gaps, we can give you all the data, hear all the questions that people are asking and which topics those apply to. Imagine if you could actually do real-time assessment of what that onboarding and training is like as to whether or not people are retaining it or enjoying the process or getting the information they need. It's just a complete 180 from the traditional way of, oh, here, we're going to hand you a bunch of information. Good luck.
Yeah, and I've seen that scenario play out over and over and over again. And in fact, hopefully that's happening less now. But when I entered the workforce back in the late 90s, and then all the jobs I had, man, for probably up until my current, I do consulting work and those things on the side, but I'm a professor and I've been at my university for 13 years. So even going up through the point where I started as a full professor at the university, it was probably mostly still that way, where it's just literally binders. And it's so crazy and ridiculous. Now, thankfully, organizations are getting more and more away from that, but there's still holdouts that are giving you that stinking binder and just, they expect, it's kind of like washing their hands, right, of it. They can just say, well, I told you it's your fault if you don't do the thing that correctly. And that's such a dumb way to approach it.
What do you mean you didn't understand every single policy in a 247-page document?
In every process and every procedure and everything like that. And so it really is a dumb way to do business. It's terribly inefficient. It wastes tons and tons of time. You end up wasting time also just on the blame shifting and like who's responsible for what. Like, just give people answers. Most people show up to work wanting to do their best work. They show up to work wanting to be effective. They don't come to work wanting to screw over the company, usually. That comes later when you get disillusioned and you get really upset because you get blamed for stuff that you shouldn't get blamed for. But, most people show up and they want to do their best job. And so make it as easy for them to do that as possible, to get the answers that they need. I can think just personally so many times where there's so much bureaucracy, so much red tape, so many policies, practices, and procedures to navigate. And I know I'm not sure what to do. So I go and I look in policy. I'm like, that's not terribly clear. So then I go and ask somebody and they say, well, I think it might mean this. And I go ask somebody else and they send me to somebody else. And I end up talking to 5 different people. Nobody actually really know the answer to the question. And so I just wasted, hours of time, and I have no more clarity on what I'm supposed to do or allowed to do than I did before. And then I just have to decide, well, is it worth the risk? Should I just do it because I think it's the best thing to do and then deal with whatever consequences might come if I did it wrong? Or do I just take the safe path? And a lot of people end up taking the safe path. And so then you squelch innovation and creativity, like all those things go down as well.
Well, it might be helpful to use a very concrete example on how we're seeing companies move through the process of automation. So I'll make this a personal example. So this was about a year ago. We were still in the thick end of the pandemic, and most of our system is accessible via login, but there are a few things that we have that you can only access via VPN if you're internal. So I was trying to figure out, how do I connect to the VPN on my phone? Because I got a new iPhone. And I'm a reasonably technical human, but for the life of me, I could not figure it out. So instead of having to go to my IT team, file a ticket, go through all these hoops, I just went to the capacity bot and I asked, how do I connect to the VPN? Came back instantly with the answer, and I was on my merry way. Now, if you think about the process you can go through there, some people will come back and they'll be like, David, this is great, but I don't know if our team is ready to handle a bot. I don't know if they're going to use a bot. We're not really a very techy company. Like, well, does your team use email? And everybody raises their hand. So if you think about the different stages, stage one, I email your support box and say, oh, how do I connect to the VPN? And it goes and creates a little ticket for me in the back end, and your team starts to jump in. Stage two, I send the email to the support box. It creates the ticket, and I get an auto response back saying someone will get back with you at some point, right? Trivially better than stage one. Stage three is where it starts to get interesting. In this case, I email your support box, goes and creates the ticket. But in addition, it's going to go ask the bot to jump in and send me an auto response saying, David, we got your message. Does this answer your question? How do I connect to the virtual private network? I hit yes, this answered my question, automatically closes the ticket. So here we're having the bot not displace a human, but just jump into the middle of the conversation so that if it can be self-serve, you can get a self-serve response. Okay, step 4, this time I email the support box. It doesn't create the ticket. The bot comes in and responds. And if I say no, thumbs down, that didn't answer my question, then it goes and creates the ticket. So now you're literally avoiding that work that someone would have to take on. And then finally, there's step 5. In step 5, instead of so I know I could email my support team, but Brian on the support team, if I email him directly, I know he'll respond to me, right? So we've all done that where we do the end around and we go around the channel to try to go straight to the person. Well, now Brian's in a tough spot. Brian doesn't respond to me. He feels like a jerk. If Brian makes up the answer, then he might have given me incorrect information. Now Brian has to go dig through and find the answer to respond back. So we're actually building out a plugin for both Gmail and Office 365, where when I email Brian, hey, Brian, how do I connect to the VPN? The plugin will actually go scan that email, go check with the bot, and put a little injectable button so Brian can just hit the button, and then it puts the entire VPN instructions directly in the email. So now even if I go around that support box, Brian isn't having to go jump through a bunch of hoops. I get the right answer, and at the bottom he can write next time ask capacity.
Yeah, great example. And we all deal with those types of little things pretty consistently, right? I actually have to go get a new phone. I think I'll do it later today because my phone just stopped charging and turning on. So time for a new phone, right? So that means I'm going to have to reset up all of the permission things on my phone to access everything at work. And, it's just, it's tedious. It takes a little bit of time. There's enough time that passes and probably enough things that change in the process between, 3 years ago when I got my phone versus today, that I don't remember exactly how to do it. And so I'm going to probably end up spending a couple hours trying to do all those things just so I can access everything that I need to do my work from my phone. And that's really annoying. It's dumb. And it's one of the reasons why I've resisted going to get a new phone for so long, right, to the point where it won't even turn on because I didn't want to have to deal with it. And so anything you can do to just make that easier, to help streamline the process, take away the busy work, assist people who might be overloaded, overburdened. All of those things I think are a real positive for us and our teams. And that's what these bots are allowing us to do, and what AI can help us to do. And like you alluded to earlier, I laid out that dystopian scenario, which is silly, and we're nowhere near anything like that. But there is tremendous capacity with AI, and that capacity increases, daily. Like we're in an exponential curve in terms of computing power and the cost of storage and memory and all those things. It means that we're going to be able to do more and more, faster and better, and more efficiently. And that's a positive. So let's learn how to use the tools. Let's leverage them for our teams and free up everyone's time so they can do what really matters, what's going to be meaningful and impactful for them and the business.
Absolutely. And I think the other thing that's been really interesting with our clients is that our clients will often start in one department or one area. Maybe it's HR, or maybe it's IT, or maybe it's customer success. And then they find that the other groups are wanting to jump in. They're like, oh, how do I add to this? Or, oh, I want my department to be able to automate its support too. And so you see this kind of proliferation where eventually it becomes almost like the level 0 support brain for the whole organization, and then intelligently escalates up to the right person. Because we always say, no matter how good, even if our AI can answer 90% of the questions, that last 10%, how we handle those with white glove service to be able to get you to the right person to answer your question is just as important.
Yeah. Very well said. David, it has just been a pleasure. I note the time. I'm going to have to let you go here in just a minute. But before we wrap up, I wanted to give you a chance to share with listeners how they can connect with you, find out more about your work, your team, and what you can do for them. And then give us a final word on the topic for today.
Yeah. So if you'd like to reach out, you can visit www.capacity.com. You can email me directly, david@capacity.com, if you'd like to learn more about what we're up to. We've got a bunch of case studies on the website as well, specifically within the HR space. So happy to walk through those as well. But I think the place I'd leave you with is there are only going to be two types of companies: the companies that embrace this kind of tech and the companies that are left out in the cold. We already have clients who are budgeting for capacity out of their hiring budget because we're in this crazy job market where it's so hard to find the right people. So my encouragement to you is you don't have to eat the elephant in one bite. Just get started. Find the first place where you can start automating and applying AI, and you'll find that it will snowball into more and more opportunities.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you, David. It's been a real pleasure. I encourage listeners to reach out, get connected, find out more about what David and his team can do for you. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week. If you enjoy the Human Capital Innovations podcast, enjoy ad-free listening by going to the Patreon page. And please consider contributing even at the producer or sponsorship level. And please leave a review. Thank you for your support. Thanks again for joining us for this episode of the Human Capital Innovations podcast. I hope you stay healthy and safe and that you have a great week.